Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I'm your host, Preston Proctor. I know you guys are all worried about me here in the studio with backup computers and stuff. We have our original computer back here, and of course I had to spend an inordinate amount of time configuring it, and then I come in here this morning and things aren't working again. Gotta love it. Because it's so uncommon. Anyway, so we're back. Having multiple issues this morning. So we are back in the studio with our regular computer. I did do a little bit of research on the Atlanta Gladiators, which not as interesting as I would have liked, frankly. But did it? There's only one player on the Gladiators that is committed to the Preds. They are the Preds ECHL affiliate, but only defenseman number 4 Jeremy Hansel is a committed player to Nashville. They have a committed player. Well, they have a player who is unsigned by San Jose. He didn't seem to have any stats, so I'm not exactly sure what's with him, and I didn't really care because he's not committed to Nashville, so big deal. Jeremy Hansel has 19 points in 50 games, so not outstanding. He has the worst plus-minus at minus 19. And in the game that I watched with the Stingrays, he did have an assist on that goal. So it was at least that was something. But not so much Atlanta Gladiators. The Stingrays have more players committed to the Caps. So kind of interesting to look at the ECHL teams. I'm not sure exactly how that affiliation is going, but there you go. So promised you guys I would do it. Kind of probably wish now I hadn't, because what did I just wasted, I don't know, time out of my life and your life to find out that there's nothing. But at least there's certainty in that, right? Well, now we know there is nothing right now going on between the Preds and the Atlanta Gladiators. They are 11th in the ECHL, not going to make the playoffs. They're 26, 28, and 5, which is about 500, but to be 11th and have almost a 500 record seems a little interesting. But anyhow, that's your story. On the postseason watch, we do have a little bit going on. The Jets have now clinched a playoff spot, so Winnipeg and the Caps are both have clinched playoff spots. Not real surprising. The two teams that are going to be fighting it out for the President's Cup. And depending on how you feel about that, you can root for one team or another. The only thing certain is that the President's Cup winner won't go very far in the playoffs. So if you're a secondary Caps fan or a secondary Jets fan, you might want to pull for the other guys. In our transaction watch, we actually do have some information about the Preds. Yesterday, defenseman Mark Delgaizo, and left-wing Kiefer Bellows were placed on waivers. They have a 24-hour window on that, so I'm not exactly sure what the timing is. Nothing new this morning on somebody else picking them up. But they are both unrestricted free agents at the end of the year. Mark Bellows is unrestricted free agent group 6. And I think, I tried to read up on some of the waiver issues, and I wound up on the Carolina Hurricanes site of all places that happened to have a a primer and tried to explain the differences in long-term injured reserve and emergency call-ups and stuff like that. And it was more information than I knew, so that was good, but didn't really clear much up for me. But hopefully Delgaizo and Bellows clear waivers and make it to Milwaukee. I don't know. I think Delgaizo's been playing well enough that somebody could claim them. Kind of interesting in that respect. If more than one team claims them, then it goes by waiver order, which is based on how your standings. So the lower your standings, the more priority you have. So if San Jose were to claim him, say San Jose and Chicago, then San Jose would get him because they are lower in the standings than Chicago. Yeah. So anyway, both of those guys, unrestricted free agents, they're both $775,000 a year. So we'll see how that all works out. Okay, so deja vu. Hey, St. Louis coming to town. We're playing St. Louis tonight. Jiminy cricket, the third time in 6 games we're playing St. Louis. But luckily, it's going to be the last time we see them. It's the 4th game of 4, third meeting in 6 games. St. Louis is 3-0 against the Preds, so they're liking it. Want some more of it. St. Louis has won 7-4 in St. Louis, 4-1 in Nashville, and 4-1 back in St. Louis. So there's always a 4. Hopefully Nashville can turn that around. But this year the Preds have lost the first and third periods in all 3 games, but they did win a period. They won the second period in the last meeting, which the second period was tied in the first 2 games with St. Louis this year. So that's improvement. Yeah, we won a period. So maybe we could not lose 2 periods tonight. That would be another step in the right direction. The St. Louis Blues are 38-28-7, 18-14-4 on the road. They are 5th in the Central with 83 points, 2 points behind a fading Minnesota. I don't know what's going on in Minnesota. They started out one of the best teams in the league. Winnipeg started out completely hot, and then they kind of cooled a trifle, and Minnesota was right there with them. And over the last, Minnesota has just really kind of tanked. I didn't dive into this a lot to see if they had some sort of injury problems or what might be going on there. It doesn't really look like they've got a lot of injury problems going on there. They did recall a defenseman for emergency conditions. They were just recently, but not exactly sure what's going on in Minnesota. But they are this time of the year they've lost their last 2 to Vegas and Dallas. After beating Buffalo, Seattle, and L.A. Well, they beat L.A., so they're a playoff team. Lost to St. Louis, lost to the Rangers. So they're kind of struggling right now, and which provides the Blues with the opportunity to move up in the Central Division, but that will only get them to the first wild card spot. So I guess you'd rather be the first wild card spot. The 2 wild card teams play the 2 best teams in the. Maybe not. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, because it's not always. They play the divisional winners. So not always the two best teams in the conference, but they will play the two divisional winners, and the one wild card one team will play the divisional winner with the worst record. So the wild card two team plays the top team in the conference. So right now that's Winnipeg and Vegas. So I guess if you had your druthers, it all depends on the matchup too. I guess you would rather play Vegas over Winnipeg. So, the wild card one spot, it could be the Kings. The Kings are 5 points behind Vegas. They've played one less. There's possibility for the Kings to pull up into the, I guess, you're still reasonable for, the Edmonton is 7 points behind Vegas with 11 games. It's just getting so tight at this point. It's, one of these teams would have to have a collapse, kind of like what Minnesota's started doing. But anyway, this is not the Wild. Oh, and Minnesota plays Washington tonight, and then 2 games against New Jersey. They play New Jersey at home, and then they're at New Jersey. I just don't get this. All these back-to-back with teams. That's probably happened before. I just didn't pay as much attention to it. But anyway, so Minnesota has a few, and then they play the Rangers and the Islanders and then Dallas. They're playoff teams. They're primarily going to be meeting playoff teams here on Wild Talk. So St. Louis has an opportunity to move up into the first wild card spot if they keep playing, and Minnesota keeps playing the way they play. St. Louis has played one more than Minnesota, and they're 2 points behind. So Minnesota's still in the driver's seat, but they've kind of got to pull it together. The Blues are 2 points behind Minnesota, who's played one less. They're 8 ahead of Utah, who has played 2 less, and in the second wild card spot, currently 4 points ahead of Calgary, who's played 3 less. So I still really think that Calgary is better positioned to go into the playoffs in a wild card spot. I guess just the thing is now whether Minnesota or the Blues are going to get kicked out because, Minnesota's just kind of fading right now. Calgary is on a 4-game winning streak. They play Dallas tonight. Then they go on the road, Edmonton, Colorado, Utah, Anaheim, Vegas. Their upcoming schedule looks a little bit easier than what Minnesota is going to be facing or the Blues. I still think that Calgary has kind of got the inside track on one of the wild card spots. I thought Minnesota was in pretty good shape, but boy, that's why you got to play the games, right? All right, then for St. Louis coming here to Nashville tonight, this is the first game of a 2-game road trip. Saturday, they play Colorado. So they play Nashville and then Colorado, and then they go home for 3, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Colorado again. Then Winnipeg and Edmonton. So St. Louis's schedule looks a little bit easier than Minnesota's here at the end, but you got to play the games. Yeah, I think probably the people in Toronto and Carolina were thinking that the Nashville game would be a little bit easier, but take that. All right. Let's move on. Personnel changes for St. Louis. They did recall on the 22nd, number 54 center Dalibor Dvorsky from the Springfield Thunderbirds. Number 89 left wing Pavel Buchnevich could be back tonight. He's been out since the 25th, it says. He's consistently fifth in stats, nothing remarkable, but a solid player, looks like. Always going to miss people like that. They have called up Dvorsky, so not sure if Dvorsky's going to play or how all that's going to work out. Now, one of the things that I did read is that after the trade deadline, the teams get 4 regular call-ups. They can have as many emergency call-ups as they need, but they only get 4 call-ups and after the trade deadline. So, interesting. Your Nashville Predators are 27-36-8. 18-14-3 at home. Yes, that's still a winning record at home. They are 7th in the Central Division. They're just where they've been all, since probably late November. Sufficiently ahead of Chicago and sufficiently behind Utah that it's not, nowhere. That's where they're going to wind up, people. They're now 11 points ahead of Chicago, who found a way to lose again. I guess losing's got to be easier than winning, but not always. The Predators are 11 points ahead of Chicago, who has played one more, and 13 behind Utah, even in games. They still have the 3rd worst record in the NHL, still 2 points behind Buffalo, who has still played one less game. And root for that what you want. I don't know. It's at this point of the time, there's potential positioning for draft picks. I don't really know that. Nobody wants to go out there and intentionally lose. I mean, I just don't think so. I mean, it might be, the higher ups in the organization might be, gosh, if we could just lose the rest of these games, man, we'd be in great draft position. But I can't see the coach and the players going, hey, let's phone this one in. Let's just go out there and skate for 60 minutes and, maybe we pull the goaltender. Let's just play 6-on-5 all game and see how that works out. Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how that works out. But anyway, looked at, that was something I was going to talk about the other day, and then I forgot I was going to talk about it later, and then I got to talking about part of it, and then so completely blew it on bringing it up. But basically, I did an analysis of the Preds with taking out all the back-to-backs. They've got, so far they've played 13 back-to-backs. They've got their last back-to-back Monday, Tuesday of next week, Philadelphia and the Blue Jackets. They're on the road. And most of the back-to-back games have been on the road, and the Preds haven't been good on the road. So I went and looked at it, and so the Preds are 18-14-3, and all of the home. No, there's a loss. That's a loss. How come I didn't get that one? That's a loss. How come? What's he won? So home 4-2. Yeah, you got the wrong number here, Buddy Rowe. So this one, that number. Yeah. What? K4. Oh boy. I see what I'm doing now. I'm doing wrong here. It's fun to do this in the middle of the podcast. Sorry about this. But I now I can't get Excel to work for me here. So I want this one minus that one, and then why won't you work? Yeah, this is fun stuff here. Anyway, there, that's better. Yeah, so the Preds are 18-14-3 in these back-to-backs. They are 4-2 at home. So taking those out, they're 14-12-3. But interesting, the Preds are 8-21-5 on the road. I know tonight's game is not on the road, but I saw this, and they're 3-16, 3-16-1. So 20 of these games in these 13 back-to-backs have been on the road. And if you take all that out, the Preds are 5-5-4. So if you take out all the back-to-back games, the front end and the back end, they've got a 500 record on the road. So they've really, I don't know that there's a cause and effect here, but it is notable that it is so striking. The back-to-back situations have not been kind to the Predators this season. And as I've said, they don't have more back-to-backs necessarily than everybody. I think Toronto, who is in a playoff position, has had the same number. Other teams have had less. Winnipeg, I think, has had less. And it's hard to say that it doesn't, affect the team, especially here at the consecutive. In 4 games, there were consecutive back-to-backs. Now, granted, they were, about 4 days apart. But and again, multiple times consecutive games, consecutive back-to-backs. Oh, yeah, this was on the road. Winnipeg, Minnesota, Vancouver, Calgary. There's 3 days between the 2 back-to-backs. But, yeah, it's a schedule. You got to play to your schedule. But anyway, so the interesting thing about the Preds, again, because they are 18-14-3 at home, they have 39 points at home, which is 19th in the league. And I did not revise this after last night's game, but as of yesterday, that tied them with the Devils, who are third in their division and in a playoff spot for points in the league. It's them ahead of Minnesota. They're also tied with Buffalo, who they're running behind. But yeah, so the 39 points at home is not bad. It could be better. Always could be better. But the Preds' state of play right now is you'd have to pretty much put right on the shoulders of the way they play on the road. And gosh, and how many? I mean, that's just sick, right? I mean, to be honest, they've had 20 games on the road in back-to-back situations, and they played, 36 games on the road, and 20 of them have been in back-to-back situations. I mean, they're only going to play... they're going to play 41 games this year on the road, and half of them are in back-to-back situations. Oh, yeah, the next 2 coming up. The next 2 are also away. So at the end of the day, they'll have played 22 games on the road in back-to-back situations, which is more than half the number of games they play on the road. Again, other teams don't struggle like that, but yeah. Anyway, so I just, if nothing else, you have to call out the fact that the Preds have not been a very good road team, and it's probably exacerbated by them playing on the road in back-to-back situations so much. They play Washington and then Florida, then Edmonton and Calgary, home against Tampa Bay, then went to Minnesota, Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, Minnesota, so, border crossing. And just even the timing of the games over the weekend. The Preds played at 6 o'clock on Saturday and 5 o'clock on Sunday. Meanwhile, St. Louis, the Sunday team, played at 2 and then 5, and they didn't have to travel. So I don't know. Setting up a schedule is an interesting problem. I haven't mentioned this in a while, and you guys are probably thankful about that. But when I was a grad student at Georgia Tech in the AI lab, my first project was to work on a scheduling system for the American League of Baseball, and so I've always been kind of had an eye towards travel issues because it is kind of a really interesting problem to deal with. Travel and in your schedule for professional sport teams. Maybe not so much like in football, when they only play once a week, but in things like basketball, baseball, and hockey, where they are playing multiple games a week and potentially having to play in consecutive. Well, baseball always plays on consecutive days. But they don't always have to travel between every game. But yeah, they could have to travel a pretty decent distance on consecutive days. So the travel issues in professional sports, I think, is kind of a fascinating study. Anyway, this is not travel talk. Oh, all right. Predators proclivity. Personnel issues for the Preds. Yossi is still injured. Not expecting him back. We'll see whether he plays in Dallas the last game of the year or not. At least it's a home game. And then Mark Del Gaizo and Kiefer Bellows placed on waivers yesterday. So they have been sent back to, hopefully they will be back down in Milwaukee and not picked up. I think that's maybe more of a risk for Del Gaizo because I think he has played really well. Bellows has played fine, but I think Del Gaizo's really made a mark for himself. So I guess with Stasny playing more, they don't need him, though it seems odd. But maybe they did need roster space. Anyway, so that's your Nashville Predators status update. Okay, so let's take a look at some numbers. The Preds' home stats, they're 18, 14, and 3. Tonight's game is a home game. At least I'm consistent there. And so we always start with my least favorite thing to talk about, at least that way I get over it, is the first goal of the game. All right, so when the Preds get the first goal of the game, they're 10, 5, and 3. Pretty good. Pretty good. A slight advantage towards winning. 2-1 winning in regulation, I guess. If they don't get it, they're 8 and 9. So it hasn't been that much of a determinant. Last season, it definitely was. For the Preds to get it anyway, last year they were 16, 5, and 2 overall getting it at home and 7-11 when they didn't. So it wasn't necessarily an advantage for the visiting team to get the first goal, kind of similar to this season. But it was a lot stronger last year. Preds played better last year. So of course that the numbers would look different. But it is still of note that the visiting team doesn't get that great of an advantage from getting the first goal. The Preds primarily get it in the first period. They have gotten it once in the second period, not in the third or overtime. And they lost the game that they got the first goal in the second period. Now, when the other team gets the first goal in the second period, they have a winning record. They're 3-2. So if the opponents have to get the first goal here in Nashville, it's better for that to happen in the second period, it looks like. Just 5 data points, not really anything to hang your hat on, but hey, it's a trend. So yeah, that all looks pretty good. Winning by period, the Preds have a winning record in the first period, 16-8-11. A losing record in the second and third, 11-16-8 in the second, 14-15-6 in the third. No real surprise there. And, of course, who cares if you win, lose, or draw the period? But how does that work on the end of the game? Well, so when the Preds win the first period, they are 11-5. If they lose the first period, they're, now I got this whistle, 2-6. And if they tie, 5-6. So it's not, tying the first period isn't so bad. Winning the first period is pretty good. Losing it, rather not. The second period, when the Preds win the second period, they're 10-1. When they lose, 4-11, and tie, it's tied, 4-4. And then similarly in the third period, when they win the third period, they're 13-1, 2-13 when they lose it, and 3-3 when they tie. So all those numbers look great. You win the periods, you win the game, but the combinatorics tend not to work out quite so well. So when, is that number right? 11. 5, 3, and 3 is 11. Okay, right. So if the Preds win the first and win the second, they're 5-5. If they lose the first and win the second, they're 2-1. So that's pretty good. And if they tie the first and win the second, they're 3-0. So all of this winning the second looks pretty good. Even losing the first, winning the second, 2-1. So it hasn't happened that often, but kind of still looks very positive. If they win the first and lose the second, they're 3-2-2. It's happened 7 times. 3-2-2. So not horrible, but not that great. Losing the first, losing the second, you lose 2 periods in the NHL, you pretty much lost the game. A few circumstances where that's not the case. Happened twice this season, happened once last season. All 3 of those scenarios was the losing team got a goal in the first and second, so they came into the third period up to nothing, and then the winning team got 2 goals in the third and then won in overtime. Last year, the Preds did that against Pittsburgh, and this year it was done to them twice. So there is that can be that losing 2 periods. It's not a. I guess at the exception to prove the rule. I'm not sure how many times that's happened in the NHL. I don't know that there's any place I can track that. But anyway, so if they tie the first and lose the second, that's not great. 1-5, right? So and then let's move on to tying the second period. So if they win the first and tie the second, they're 3-0-1. So I mean that's not perfect, but it's good. If they lose the first, tie the second, they're 0-2, and tie the first and tie the second, 1-1. So whatever they do in the first, they need to win the second period. I mean, that's just where the numbers are. They can even win the first, and if they win the first and win the second, well, I mean, that's all good. But but the numbers really kind of point towards the Preds need to win the second period. But that's there you go. On the road, it's the best scenario is to tie the first and win the second. But you want to win the first period. Let's just be honest. But it really depending on what you do in the first period, the Preds seem to be able to work out a lot better if they win the second period. So that's how that rolls itself out. As far as the winning goal, when is the winning goal being scored? Those of you that might be new listeners, let's just call on the last time we played St. Louis. The final score was 4-1, and so the losing team only got one goal. So the second goal was the winning goal, and I do believe, I've been tracking that too. I haven't done much with that, but let's see. Against Carolina, the Preds won that game. The winning goal scored in the second. The loss in St. Louis, the winning goal was scored in the first. The two games before that, a win and a loss, the winning goal scored in the second. Both of the most recent games against St. Louis, the winning goal has been scored in the first. And both of those were losses for the Preds. Let's see, 2-0. Yeah, so at the end of the first period, St. Louis was up 2-0 in both of the last games. The Preds did get a goal in the second period, it looks like. So, so the second goal scored in the first period was the winning goal in those scenarios. And then here on the road, it's pretty even right now between the second and third period, and the first period is sneaking up there. So the winning goal has been scored 8 times in the first and 10 in the second and third. So 29% in the second and third, 23 in the first. So that's looking a little gnarly. If the Preds win 33% of the time, they're getting the winning goal in the third period. And when they lose 35% of the time, the winning goal is in the second, evenly split 24% in the first and third. So, the averages are sneaking towards being very even. Sneak. Overall, not the case, but that's because of what happens on the road, which we're not talking about. The home team winning, for the Preds, when the home team wins, 33% of the time it's in the second period, 27 in the third. And when the road team wins, 42% of the time, it's in the second. Those two first period wins for St. Louis recently are kind of anomalies. That's an anomaly. Them winning is an anomaly. I'm saying it. Okay, so that's your winning goal. As far as goal scoring, which is not an awful thing to talk about when we're looking at the home numbers, because the Preds' home numbers, because they do have a winning record, the home numbers don't look too bad. They are outscoring the opponents in the first period, 34-28. They're outscored, not surprising, in the second period, 31-39, and outscored in the third, 35-37. So the first period is the only period where they're outscoring. And even if you take out the empty nets in the third period, the Preds have 12-9 for the opponents. So that becomes 28-23. And here in Nashville, the winning team is getting 4.2 goals. That's true for the Preds and the opponents. And the losing team, if it's the opponents, it's 1.9. If it's the Preds, 1.7. So it all kind of comes down to overall, the Preds are scoring 3 goals here at home and the opponents 3.1. Taking out the empty nets, Nashville is scoring 2.6 goals a game, the opponent's 2.8. So even though they have a winning record here in Nashville, they are being outscored. So 104-107. So it's close, but they've got a winning record, right? Winning record. Well, I guess if you look at the three overtime losses, so they'd be 18-17. If you just count the losses. So a winning record, and they're being outscored at home. So I guess maybe they're lucky to even have a winning record. And so then looking at the scenarios that I like to look at, coming into the second period and the third period, if the Preds are winning, tied, or losing, and in the only scenario where the Preds are outscoring the other guys is in the third period, if they enter the third period winning. However, the 18-10, however, the Preds have 8 empty net goals in those situations, so it's tied at 10-10. So even if they enter the third period winning, they're not really outscoring the other guys. Guys. I'm saying it that way today. You guys. Well, I guess I'd take that back. I can add, when the Preds are losing entering the second period, it's 7-6. So, okay, so that's outscoring. That's new. Maybe that's not new, but it's highlighted. So that's okay, so 7-6. So if the Preds are losing entering the second period, they are outscoring the opponent 7-6 here in Nashville. Yeah, but not by much. I know it's still being outscored. I misspoke, but yeah. Anyway, so the scoring for the Preds in the second, third periods is not outpacing their opponents here in Nashville, which is, like I said, they've got a winning record here in Nashville. So you would think that it would be different. As far as special teams go, Preds are doing pretty well. They did get a first period power play goal the other day, so they are now up to 28% in the first period. They have scored 9 goals on 32 opportunities in the first period, which is the most goals that they've scored in any period on the power play. 8 in the second and 3 and 6 in the third. They have way more, 25% more opportunities in the second and about 25% less in the third. So they're only 25 opportunities. The opponents have only had 29 opportunities in the third period as well. So that number is about the same, and both teams have scored 6 power play goals in the third period. So that has run pretty even. The opponents and Nashville both have scored 8 goals in the second period. In the power play, the opponents have had 5 more opportunities, so 8 goals on 45. So the opponents running about 18%. And until I started mentioning this stat, the opponents hadn't gotten a power play goal in the first period. Now they're up to 5. And here in Nashville, they're running at 11%, 3 goals on 28 opportunities, and the Preds are 28%. 24% in the third, and I guess they got a power play in the second the other day, so that's come up to 20%. So all in all, the Preds are doing pretty well and better, and overall, they've got 2 more goals for than against on 25 less opportunities. So, so the Preds are winning in general. The special teams, the power, well, the 5-on-4, they're winning the 5-on-4 battle. I don't think the 5-on-3, I've got 0 goals for them this season. Looks like it's only happened about 4 times. Versus 9 times for the opponents, and they've got 3 goals on those 9 opportunities. None of the goals on 5-on-3 have been here in Nashville. The Preds have had 2 opportunities to the opponents' 3. And 4-on-4, the Preds are beating the opponents 4-2, so they're kind of winning that 3-1 here in Nashville. So they are kind of leading that opportunity. 6-on-5 opportunities. Preds are giving up. They've given up 3 to their 2, and 6-on-5 versus empty net, right? Yeah, whatever. Oh no, that's when that's when you're on 6-on-5, or the other team's a 6-on-5 and they score. Not when the team that has not empty net goals. Yeah, when you pull your goaltender and you manage to score. So the opponents have done that 3 times, and the Preds have only done it twice. But the Preds have had more opportunities. Not surprising. Well, I guess it is kind of surprising because they have a winning record. But 56-49, that number doesn't seem quite right. Oh, delayed penalties. Right, delayed penalties opportunities. Right. So one of the things I have tracked is if there's a delayed penalty, how many, what happens in those particular situations. They are 6-and-5 opportunities, but unless you shoot the puck in your own net, which the Preds did, but not in a delayed penalty. Anyway, so that's your special teams. Now for the matchups. The St. Louis Blues coming to town. They are the 11th as far as goals scoring for, 11th in the league. Goals against, they are 18th. The Predators, 31st for goals for and 10th in goals against. The St. Louis has scored 220 goals for to 208, which is, I think, interesting because I think when we met them for the second time, that they were running their goals for was below goals against, and maybe not surprising when I did this analysis months ago. 12 of the top 12 teams that had more goals for than goals against, and I think 12 was were all playoff teams. So playoff teams tend to score more goals for than goals against. I guess it's, again, not really surprising. But when are they scoring their goals? And the Blues are kind of like Nashville. They're fairly evenly spread out. 68 in the first, 74 in the second, 72 in the third. The Preds 53, 63, 62. So the Preds are a little behind in the first period. They are 28th in the league in the scoring in the first period, and last in the third. Sneak up to 25th. They're in the second. The Blues are 10th in the league in scoring in the first period, 12th in the second, and 17th in the third. That as scoring goes up from period to period in the league. Goals against, 208 for the Blues, 229 for the Preds, which kind of close there. The Blues apparently like to give up goals in the first and third, but not in the second, which is where the Preds have, interestingly enough, scored the 2 goals in the last 2 games. They have given up 57 goals in the second period, which puts them 30th in the league in goals against. That's pretty good. You can, count your goals if you get them in the second period against the Blues. And they're 8th in the league and being scored against in the first. It's 70. The Preds are pretty good in the first, 61, which puts them 17th in the league, but they like to give them up in the second and increasingly so in the third. 82 goals have been scored against the Preds in the second period, which puts them 7th in the league, and then 78, which puts 12th in the league. It's interesting, 3-goal difference between the Blues and the Predators, but 7 spots between them. So a lot of ties, I guess. Goals for, when I just copied over my script from the last St. Louis game, and they were 16th in goals for then, and they are 11th now. So since the last game with Nashville, they've gotten moved up the ranks of goals for, and then that looks like it was primarily in the third period because they went from 23rd in the league to 16th, 17th now. So, yeah. So that's when, so there you go. So the Blues don't have a preference for what period they score in. Neither does the Preds, seemingly. But the Preds like giving up goals in the second and third, and the Blues like giving up goals in the first and third. So that none of that will happen. Yeah, kind of interesting because the Preds are stingiest in the first period, and that's the last two games. That's where the Blues have scored the goals, right? 4 even, right? So that's pretty significant given the Preds have only given up 61 goals in the first period, throughout all the games. So there you go. Penalty situations. The Nashville Predator penalty kill is still in the top 10, ninth. Chicago dropped below them after yesterday's game. And St. Louis is 28th. So Nashville has 40 goals against and 211 opportunities for 81%. And St. Louis has 46 goals against, so 6 more on 170 opportunities, so 41 less. 6 more goals on 41 less opportunities for a percentage of 72.9. Nashville's 211 is 7th most in the league, and St. Louis's 170 is 5th least in the league, and the 9th most goals against. So that's stats that aren't looking so great for them. I think I remember right. The announcers were talking about how maybe it was their power play had gotten better here in the last of the season. I don't know that their penalty kill is or is not, but that's where they're at. As far as on the power play, both teams are right kind of in the top of the lower half of the league. St. Louis is 17th. The Preds are 20th. 21.7, 21.1%. St. Louis has scored 36 goals on 166 opportunities to the Preds 42 on 199. So St. Louis's power play opportunities third lowest in the NHL. So the St. Louis games have some of the lowest number of penalties in the league. Nashville is 14th, so right about middle of the league. But you have to say the Preds have a slight advantage overall, fairly even on the power play, but the Preds should have a better penalty kill overall for the season anyway. Okay, so moving on to your goaltenders. Who are we going to see in goal? I don't know. But let's look at the numbers. So St. Louis has Jordan Benningham. He's 24, 21, and 4. He had been getting about two starts to one. They're more or less alternating is what it looks like right now. I was surprised to see Hofer in goal in the second game. I thought Benningham would be in goal, but Hofer was. They won the game, so I guess it worked out. Joel Hofer is 14, 7, and 3. And this year in games between St. Louis and Nashville, Hofer was in the first 2, so he's 2-0. And Bennington was in the third, and so, he got the win that time. Last year, Hofer was in goal for the first goal, and Benningham the last 2. Last year, Nashville swept St. Louis, so all of those were losses. And last year, Nashville and St. Louis only met 3 times. This year, they're meeting 4. As I said, they're somewhat alternating in goal, but Benningham was in goal for the last 2, so I think it's pretty sure that Hofer will be in goal versus Nashville. For the Predators, UC Saros is 18, 27, and 6. He was playing 2-ish for each one of Justice Annunen, who's 8, 7, and 1. Against the Blues, Saros was in goal for the first 2, and Annunen was in goal for the third game. Last year, Lankinen was in goal for the first and Saros for the last 2. Annunen did play versus St. Louis for Colorado last year. It was a win. Saros was in goal versus Carolina, so I believe we will see a Noonan tonight. Momentum. St. Louis still has a chance at the wild card, maybe even the first wild card. Not the division. The divisional spot, I don't believe they have a chance at that one. Colorado is in the third spot at 81. Sorry, I couldn't read that. 91. So St. Louis is 8 points behind Colorado with 9 games left. The math there just doesn't look like it's going to work out for divisional change. I don't. Minnesota did have kind of a shot to overtake Colorado, but they're 6 points. 6 points behind with 10 games. Yeah, I think I did notice where Minnesota is playing Colorado. No, they are not playing Colorado. St. Louis is playing Colorado. Yes, St. Louis plays Colorado twice now between here and the end of the season. So, they are going to need to win those games. If they do win those games, they not only help themselves, but they could help Minnesota. And so, Minnesota's got to help themselves. But anyway, yeah, so St. Louis has a pretty good shot at playoff games, so they're going to be highly motivated. And they are on a 7-game winning streak. Hot. Of course, 2 of those were against Nashville. Who did they beat? Minnesota, Anaheim, Nashville, Vancouver, Chicago, Nashville, Montreal. So yeah, they are 8-1-1 in their last 10. So they are hot. Hotcha. Maybe they'll be looking forward to Colorado on Saturday. That's right. Tonight's game is at 5:00. Holy cow. Yeah. Okay. So good to note. Tonight's game is not at 7. It's at 5. So those of you that are here in Nashville planning on going to tonight's game, it's at 5:00. It's at 5:00. Yeah. So the game will let out. Oh, that kind of screws everybody's plans. Yeah, I mentioned my nephew Thursday nights has been playing down at Friends in Low Places, and they've rearranged the times of when they do turnover. So in general, the bands play for 4 hours, and those of you visiting Nashville, the bands are not paid very much by the clubs, so they make most of their money on tips. So please remember that. I know the drinks are expensive. It can make it really hard to guy, because I have we go down there every now and then. I don't tend to like to go to downtown Nashville too often, but we go down to Broadway to see my nephew and can I even mention this? Who's now engaged. We haven't been told officially, but we heard that 2 days ago they got engaged. So my nephew and his fiancée both performed down on Broadway, and so we'd like to go down and see them. So they've changed the times based upon when the Preds get out, but they're not gonna modify things with the Preds getting out. The game should get over by about 7:30. The shift generally down on Broadway are 6 to 10, not all of them. Some of them, the change is at 6:30. Usually takes about 15-20 minutes to change between bands. I have some commentary on that too. Really need to be better at doing quicker changeovers downtown, but you lose a lot of your audience. So one band can have a pretty good audience, and then you go to shift change and everybody just leaves, which is bad for the band that's just starting up. If the first band has got a pretty good audience, it'd be nice to be able to capture that audience. But the 20-minute shift change tends to be a little too much. But yeah, so the game's going to get over at 7:30, so all the bands will be up and running and playing. No shift change if you head down to a bar after tonight's game. celebrate the win. Those of you coming in from St. Louis or are here and are St. Louis fans, go drown your sorrows. Take a Uber back or walk, depending on where your hotel is or wherever you're staying. Don't drive. Don't drive downtown. That's for sure. And let somebody who knows what they're doing drive for you. I think in general that's a good idea. So 5 o'clock tonight is the game. So that's a lot about Broad. So this is Broadway talk, Broadway blab. Oh boy. All right. So that's so St. Louis has a chance at a wild card. Boy, 5 o'clock. Yeah. All right. It's a schedule. So 5 o'clock. And Nashville has beaten two really good teams lately. They beat Toronto and Carolina. And maybe the problem when they met St. Louis the other time was the day after the big win. Toronto, they had a big win. Then they had to travel, and the game was a little bit earlier. And just couldn't quite muster the energy that they had against Toronto, but they were able to get it back against Carolina. So, a couple days off. I think St. Louis is going to run into a buzzsaw, and who are those players for the Blues that are going to be running into this buzzsaw? Oh, thank you for asking. Number 25, Jordan Kyrou, and he's first in goals, second in points, second in plus minus with 19, pretty good. First in shots. Left wing 81, left wing Dylan Holloway, second in goals, 24, second in assists, third in points, 60, third in plus minus. So these two guys that are doing a lot of scoring have really good plus minuses. You got to love that if you're a Blues fan, or if you're one of these two guys, they probably love that. These guys. Oh, good. What side of the bed did I wake up on this morning? And then, of course, number 18, center Robert Thomas. So he's first in assists, makes him first in points, and he's fifth on time on ice with 1952. So he's your center that is, he's forward that's out there the most, 1952. So almost an entire period is when he's out there. So your number is 25, 81, 18. For your Nashville Predators, it's the usual people. Yossi is out, so his standings he's falling. He's still third in assists, fifth in points. He's now dropped to fourth in number of shots because Stamkos has now come up to third. Stamkos is second in goals, so you've got Forsberg and Stamkos. As I say, look for a player that has a 9 in their number. If they have a 9 in their number, then pay attention. Or it's divisible by 9, like 81. Then I know it's tough to do math, especially. 5 o'clock game. It should be a little bit easier to do math at 5 o'clock than maybe 9. So Marcia Schultz has been playing pretty well. He's dropped to third in goals. I don't think he's scored in a while because he was second. Ryan O'Reilly consistently fourth across the board. Fourth in goals, fourth in assists, fourth in points, fourth in time on ice. He's the guy that's going to be out there, the forward that's on the ice the most. Yossi was the defenseman that was on the ice the most, but now that he's not out there, Brady Skay is. Skay is out there 21-45. So there you go. And that's your players to watch for Nashville. All righty then. Sorry, this 5 o'clock start's kind of throwing me off here. Anyway, that's it. The St. Louis Blues come to Nashville for the third time, to play to Nashville in the third time in 6 games. Twice, I guess 2 of those games were in Nashville. So the St. Louis Blues come into town for a 5 p.m. Central Time start. Probably like 5:10 puck drop, something like that. But anyway, that's the story. Thanks for listening. I'm Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity.